Thank you to all my channel members, including my fan appreciation level members and my contributor level members, for helping support the YouTube channel. Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have my ranking of my top authors of all time. I just moved into my new studio, and I wanted to see what would be the first video besides like the studio tour. What would I christen the apartment with for the first video? And I decided to do a video talking about my favorite authors of all time. Now, there's some catches with this. One is that I need to have read more than one book by this author because really, like, you can't just make it onto the all-time list with just a single book. That's the first thing. The second thing is that there's a bunch of authors that I love that couldn't make the list because you can't include everyone. So I went through it. It's like, what were the top 26 that I have to mention? First, I had like a top 10, then 15, 20, 25. I said, these are the top 26 I have to mention because they're really noteworthy. And I love a lot of these authors, and I'm really excited to talk about my top 26 authors of all time. If you're an author and I've read you and I liked your book and you're not on here, doesn't mean you're bad. It just means these are my top 26. I love these authors. And oh boy, when we get to some of the top ones, it was so hard for some of them. My top 5, I knew instantly who were going to be in the top 5. But the rest, it was hard because I love so many of these. So let's kick it off. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold up my favorite book or favorite 2 books by that author. If I've just read one series or one thing by that, or like one series by that author, I'll just hold up one book. But if I've read a lot from that author, I'll hold up 2 books, my top 2 books by that author. So I'm going to start out with my number 26, and I'll look at my notes for this, is David Weber. David Weber. He wrote the Honor Harrington series that I've been reading. He wrote a bunch of other books that I haven't read yet, but intend to. But he's most known for the Honor Harrington, and Field of Dishonor was my favorite book in that series. I also have my number 25 is Christie Golden, who wrote not only for Star Trek, she wrote some of the Voyager books, including Homecoming, which is my favorite of her Star Trek books, but she also wrote Star Wars books, including Fate of the Jedi Ascension, which is my favorite of her Star Wars books. And she also wrote like Dark Disciple and Inferno Squad, and she's a great author. She's written a ton of great books, and I love whenever I get a new Christie Golden book. All right, my number 24 is a new author, a new addition to the list from the last year. Les Johnson. Les Johnson. He co-wrote this book with Travis Taylor. I haven't read as much by Travis, so I can't really judge him, but Les. I've also read Mission to Metheny, which I loved. I read Onto the Asteroid, which I really enjoyed. So Les Johnson really snuck up here. I have one indie author that made the list, and that is Morgan Shank, who wrote the Low Country trilogy. He's also written another series that he has the first book out, the second book he's almost done on, and I'm really excited to read those books because the Low Country trilogy was fantastic. That was fantasy. It's like a fantasy western. Sticking with fantasy, in my opinion, the best book to be published in the 2020s for fantasy is Lord of a Shattered Land by the late Howard Andrew Jones. And so he comes in at number 22. I love Howard Andrew Jones's work. I'm so sad that we lost him so early. Not because he was a great guy and a great friend, but he was a great writer. And so he comes in at number 22. And some of these authors would be higher if I'd read more by them to judge, but man, some of these are great. We also have Keith R. A. DeCandido, who wrote a ton of Star Trek books that I love. My favorite of his Star Trek books is Articles of the Federation. He comes in at number 21. And number 20 is going to be John Gwynne. I've read his Faithful and the Fallen tetralogy. The 4th book, the final book in that series, was my favorite. I do own the first Bloodsworn book. Do intend to get to it eventually because John Gwynne's a great writer. He just writes fantasy adventure the way that he writes it a way I've been craving for a while. I like his world building. I like his characters. I like his stories. So he's really good. My number 19, we're in the top 20 now. My number 19 is going to be R.F. Kuang, who not only wrote the Poppy War trilogy, which my favorite book was The Dragon Republic. She also wrote Babel, which catapulted to my favorite standalones for fantasy. It's this book. It's not for everyone. It's neither the trilogy, the Poppy War trilogy, nor Babel is for everyone. But I loved these books, and I had a blast with them. And I am just really fascinated by R.F. Kuang's writing. So I intend to read Yellowface. I intend to read her new book that just released. I don't remember the name of it, but I'm really excited to read more R.F. Kuang. She's in 19. Number 18 is another very new, recent addition. That is going to be Stephen Arion. He wrote the Nightingale and the Falcon trilogy. This is a trilogy about Mongolia, and I love this trilogy. I have more books of his to read. Once I read more of his books, we'll see if he goes up or down on the list. But he is he's such a good historical fantasy author. He's just great at it. So that was my number 18. My number 17. This author used to be so high, but there's so many good authors that I'm reading. But I love this author. That's Delilah Dawson. Everyone knows Delilah from her Star Wars books, of course. She's also written some YA books that are great. But my favorite book of hers, regardless of genre, is The Violence. Yes, it's a politically charged book, but it was such an entertaining horror read. I think she did a great job with this, and it did not get the attention it should have. But she's a great author. She comes in at 17. Number 16. My number 16 is an author I haven't read in a while, but he sticks with me, and that is Ted Dekker. Ted Dekker, author of the Circle series. I loved the first 3 books in this series. Did not love the 4th book, Green, which is supposed to turn it into a circle, but still, the first 3 books are so good. Top tier fantasy thrillers. And I want to read more Ted Dekker because he's written like every genre except for science fiction. So he's number 16. My number 15, we're to my top 15. My top 15 is Dan Wells, who everybody knows from I Am Not a Serial Killer, which his horror books are great, but he is also a very accomplished YA writer, and he wrote The Partial Sequence, which is one of my favorite YA series ever. I love The Partial series. This is so underrated. This is what should have taken off, more than like Hunger Games type stuff. This should have taken off because this is so good. So Dan Wells, he's a great author. I mean, he wrote Extreme Makeover, Ghost Station. He's such a good writer. Such a good writer. My number 14 is an author who's probably the most famous author on the list. J.K. Rowling wrote the Harry Potter series. It's amazing. Everybody should read the Harry Potter series because it's great. It's probably everybody has, so don't need to recommend it. But Harry Potter's great. My favorite book of hers is Deathly Hallows. All right, my number 13, an author I just haven't read in a long time because I've just not been collecting her books recently, but I still love her books because she's amazing, and that is Agatha Christie, author of Crooked House. Crooked House is the first book of hers that I read. It's my favorite. I know people say your first Agatha Christie book is your favorite. That might be true, but I honestly think that Crooked House would have won me over because I loved this book so much. This is one of my all-time favorite novels of all time. Agatha Christie, such a great mystery writer. She's called the Queen of Mystery. She's earned that title. All right, we're at my number 12. And I can't believe this author didn't make the top 10 because he's so good and he's written so many books I love. But I love some of his other books better. So that is going to be other authors better. That's going to be Kevin J. Anderson. Now, Kevin J. Anderson has written like so much. He's written for Star Wars. He's written for Dune. He's written some adult and YA and middle grade. He's written fantasy. He's written science fiction. He's written thrillers. He's written so much that I love. I think my favorite book of his is probably Spine of the Dragon, although it could be some of his Young Jedi Knight series that he did with Rebecca Mesta. But Kevin J. Anderson. Everybody says he's a bad writer, and they're wrong. He's a great writer, and I would contend that he is the most consistent 4 out of 5 author. He has a few 5s, and he has some 3s and 2s, but I don't think any author consistently hits 4 out of 5 in their quality like Kevin, and I enjoy that. So I think Kevin's a great writer. My number 11, another one I cannot believe did not make the top 10 because he's so good, and that's George R.R. Martin. He wrote the Game of Thrones series, the A Song of Ice and Fire series, which I loved, most of it. And then he also wrote Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, which was amazing. He wrote Fire and Blood, which is amazing. I mean, he's just a terrific author. Now, if only he would get going. I was talking with a friend about this last night, and he basically said, hey, if he turns in Win of Winter, maybe you'll bump him up to the top 10. And I'm like, you know what? That would bump him up. But he's still a great writer and comes in at 11. So we're finally at the top 10 authors of all time. And of course, this is always subject to change when I read a new author, or if I read a bunch of books by an author that I don't like. But right now, this is my top 10. And my number 10 is going to be Michael Stackpole, which everybody knows him from his X-Wing books, which are amazing. But he also is an accomplished fantasy writer. And his fantasy standalones that I've read have been amazing. I have series of his I still need to read. But his fantasy standalones are amazing. And Once a Hero is one of my favorite fantasy novels of all time. Michael Stackpole, a truly great fantasy writer. Like, if he never wrote Star Wars, if he only wrote the fantasy, he would still be somewhere on this list. But he also wrote Star Wars, which is great. That's why he's at number 10. At number 9, he has one of my favorite series of all time, but that's the only thing I've really read of his besides Warrior of the Altai. Yes, I'm talking about Robert Jordan. Robert Jordan, who is my number 9 favorite fantasy author of all time. Not fantasy author, number 9 favorite author of all time. Wheel of Time is like in my top 3 favorite fantasy series, but that's the only thing I've read of Robert Jordan's. Warrior of the Altai I thought was it's okay. So maybe if I read more of his other books and love them, he'll bump up. But man, he's a great author. I tried to decide which book to include because my favorite Wheel of Time books are the Brandon ones. So I said, what's my favorite Wheel of Time book not by Brandon? And it would either be this or Shadow Rising. So that's why I'm holding up Knife of Dreams. That or Shadow Rising. That's my number 9. My number 8 favorite author of all time. I talk about him so much because he's so amazing. Ben Bova. I've read like 7 or 8 books of his, and every one of them has been entertaining. Every one of them. And I love Ben Bova's world building. I love his hard science fiction. I think when it comes to the hard science fiction authors, he's my favorite. And I get so excited when I get to read a new Ben Bova book. I'm actually reading one as I'm recording this right now, Mercury. It's great. So Ben Bova's great author, and Mars is in contention for one of my favorite science fiction novels of all time. My number 7 favorite author of all time is David Farland, who not only gave me my favorite fantasy series in the Rune Lords, but he also gave us the Golden Queen trilogy, which is amazing. And he gave us a bunch of original science fiction novels, which I haven't read yet but intend to. He also gave us Courtship of Princess Leia, which was not great. But the Rune Lords is my favorite fantasy series of all time. So of course, David Farland had to make the list, because he's just so good at world building and magic and stuff. He's such a great writer. My number 6 is going to be an author I've also talked a lot about. All these authors I talk a lot about on the channel. My number 6 is Terry Brooks, who is, of course, most known for his Shannara series, which is amazing. But he also wrote the Magic Kingdom of Landover series, which is also amazing and so different, especially the first book. This is like Narnia for adults, and this is like Lord of the Rings for kids. It's Lord of the Rings for like teenagers and Narnia for adults is how I would describe those books. But Terry Brooks, he's just such a great writer. Now, he has probably the most misses of any author that's on this list, but he also has so many hits that it propelled him up. And I love his series, I love his books, and I love getting to read a new Terry Brooks book. He just retired. I hope he continues and is able to write more because he's so good. So that's Terry Brooks. He's number 6. We're in the top 5. I cannot believe we're in the top 5 already. Now, my number 5 is an author that I've only read 4 books of his, and I only started him this past year. And you must be like, how on earth can he catapult that high? Well, one is I read a lot of words by him because he writes chunky books, but also these books were all all-timer books for me, and I love this author so much so far that I've been buying all his books recently. I have way too many of his books I need to read. And that is Ken Follett. Ken Follett, writer of the Kingsbridge series, starting with Pillars of the Earth, which is an all-timer novel of all time for me. Ken Follett, I cannot believe how good an author he is. I cannot believe I disagree with him on so much and yet love this book so much. Ken Follett, Pillars of the Earth, he is amazing. He's my number 5 favorite author of all time. My number 4 favorite author of all time, another consistent hitting amazing books, and that is John Grisham, who writes the very serious courtroom drama thrillers like Sycamore Row, but also writes the fun, more like illicit behavior thrillers like The Litigators. And he has so many good thriller novels, and I always know I'm going to pick up a John Grisham book, I'm going to have a blast, or I'll breeze through it if I don't love it, because he just writes and just captures you and just keeps you reading. And so I love John Grisham. He's my number 4 favorite author of all time. What is my top three, and I love these authors, and actually, at one point, my number 3 was my number 1 years ago, but he slipped because I've read some great other books, but I love this author. It's funny, he's number 3 on my list, but I am probably his number 1 fan, and I'm pretty sure I can say that confidently, and that is John Jackson Miller, who everybody knows Kenobi. It's one of the best novels of all time. It is the best Star Wars novel, in my opinion. I think he is a great Star Wars author. But he also writes for other universes, including Star Trek, where he wrote, in my opinion, the best Star Trek books, including the Prey trilogy, and he wrote the standalone Hell's Heart. He is, when it comes to media tie-in fiction, he is the best media tie-in fiction author. He is the type of author that could go to any media tie-in fiction, and I don't care what the brand is. He can go to DC, he could go to Marvel, he could go to Warhammer, and I would read his books, just his books, because I know he's such a good media tie-in author. So John Jackson Miller, my number 3 author of all time, favorite media tie-in author. Now, my number two author of all time is an author I talk a lot about. I've interviewed this author. He's great, and his books wow me so much. And that is Timothy Zahn, who everybody knows him for his Star Wars stuff, and I love his Star Wars stuff. His Star Wars stuff is great. It's not his best work. Read his original science fiction books. He's a great original science fiction author. He has some duds, but he is a great science fiction author. 2 of my all-time favorite original science fiction novels are by Timothy Zahn, including The Green and the Gray, which is just such a thought-provoking book that you would never know is thought-provoking on the surface. On the surface, it looks like an aliens coming to Earth mixed with West Side Story. You would think that that's just going to be a fun adventure. Oh, it's so deep, so deep. But he also wrote the book Manta's Gift, which, as of right now, is my favorite science fiction novel of all time. I mean, it's just that good. And this book's amazing, and Timothy Zahn, he writes so much. But he also writes big series. Those are standalones. He's also written big series like the Cobra series, the Conqueror series. He's written the Icarus saga. I mean, he just has so many great books. So many great books. And you probably could figure out who my number 1 author is. He's been my number 1 author for a while. That could change, but not only do I just love so much about this man's writing, but he also wrote literally two of my top 3 novels of all time. And that is Brandon Sanderson, who wrote Warbreaker, which is my number 3 novel of all time. I love Warbreaker. Such a great standalone fantasy novel. And I re-listen to it on audiobook all the time. I'm not an audiobook person, but I'll do rereads on audiobook, and it's just amazing. But he also wrote my favorite novel of all time, and he has so many other books that are great, like his Mistborn trilogies and the tetralogy are great. He wrote the Stormlight Archive, which is great. He wrote Tress of the Emerald Sea, Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, which are great. But he also wrote my favorite novel, and that is Brandon Sanderson's Elantris. And I love Brandon Sanderson's Elantris. It is my favorite novel of all time. If we're talking about favorite books of all time, if we had to include nonfiction, of course I would say the Bible, but after the Bible, this is right behind it. So that's my favorite novel of all time, and Brandon Sanderson, my favorite novelist. And even when I find a book of his that I don't love, I know that there's another one that I will love down the road because he just writes such good books. So that is my favorite authors of all time, my top 26. Of course, there's a ton of authors I couldn't even talk about. There's a ton of Star Wars and Star Trek authors that I love that couldn't make the list. There's some science fiction authors like Frank Herbert just missed the list. Some great fantasy authors that just missed the list. But those are my favorite authors of all time. If you've read any of these, let me know what you think of my list. Tell me how crazy I am for putting some of them so high or so low. And let me know who's on your list. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.